Welcome back. Now, we're taking a segment focusing on the investment environment. You know, the Nigerian economy is in, well, murky waters, and the conversation everywhere is about how to diversify the economy and how to move it out of the position where it is, away from recession, and then we're looking at how to attract more investment into the economy while keeping the investment we have already. But the question also arises as regards regulations. What kind of regulations do we have? What are the laws that we have that will encourage the investors to come in, or to keep the ones that we have and encourage more investment? Well, these are some of the things we'll be looking at today, and I have joining me for this conversation Mr. Bismarck Ruwani, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's begin with this question of what is, if I say what's the state of the economy, I don't say you know where the economy is right now, but
let's summarize that. Let's start from that.
Okay, so what's the state of the Nigerian economy?
The starting point of the conversation is that the Nigerian economy is facing serious headwinds, and that's normal. Everybody talks about it. We're in a recession, we know that. The President has alluded to that. Some have alluded to the fact that it's stagflation. No, you pass through stagflation when you get a recession. Recession is worse than stagflation. So the solutions are what we're talking about. Nigerians are tired of hearing about the problems. They know it, they feel it. It's difficult to mask misery, because the opposite of misery is prosperity. All right, so the question is, what are we doing about it? Two things. One, there's the government side. The government is increasing the expenditure in the 2017 budget by 30%, or 20 odd percent, to 7-point-something trillion naira. But if you take 7 trillion naira and divide it by 305, which is the exchange rate to the official, and take 6 trillion naira last year and divide it by 199, there's actually a contraction of 15%. You need to grow the economy to create jobs, right? And you need to invest in the right sector. Now, government will do its part, and I think they're going to do much more than that.
Okay.
But you need private investment from domestic sources and private investment from international sources. To do this, you send the right signals by creating an environment, and we have heard that enabling environment is a cliche which nobody wants to hear about.
That's one thing.
People are sick and tired of hearing about it. Now, the focus of this discussion is about what should we not do. One of the things we should not do, and I'm going to focus on what they call combative regulatory environment, where the regulator becomes a combatant rather than being collaborative, right? And it's based on the chaos theory, that you can thrive in chaos, right? And that the opposite of a regulated environment is anarchy, right? But anarchy can be useful in the sense that it can hold regulators to account, right? And that is what it is. So we have agreed that the government will increase expenditure, they say, by 30%. They're going to have social programs, they're going to do that, but that's not going to create the jobs. The jobs that are going to be created is when domestic and private investors invest. Why would they invest? They invest because they see certainty, they see clear regulation, right? And they see ease of doing business.
Okay, in the course of the conversation, you said something about a 15% contraction in the economy.
Yes, 15% contraction in the expenditure. Even though you have increased your expenditure by 30%, because the currency has devalued by 60%, effectively you have actually contracted in dollar terms by 15 or 20%. Yes.
And to get out of that point, we need to get private and public investment.
Yes.
But to even begin to get the investment, you need to look at the regulatory environment.
Yes.
What kind of regulations do we have now?
Well, you have regulations that are far from clear. You have regulations that are, some of them are clear, but I'm going to focus more on the penalties, right?
Okay.
And the enforcement of the penalties.
Okay, we do have a slide there, the chaos theory, where you talked about society without regulation is anarchy and, and all of that.
And that's the chaos theory we're talking about. And people used to say companies can self-regulate. Self-regulation did not work. In the United States, it ended up with Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns going bust and almost brought the entire world down. Okay, so we have that problem, right? So you need some regulation, but you do not need combative regulation.
Let's look at how do you differentiate the regulation and the combative regulation?
Combative regulation is more in the implementation of the regulation. And if for example, there's an infraction, and there'll be infractions, and at times negligence, at times innocent mistakes, do you have a slap on the wrist? Do you have a penalty to send a signal to others, don't do it? Or do you have, there's penalty and there's what they call a death penalty. A death penalty means you kill the person, right? And so when we go back into what kind of penalties have been inflicted on Nigerian corporates in the last couple of years, then you begin to ask yourself, why? And if that happens to somebody else who is there, why should I come and invest? That is what I mean by the signaling. So take, for example, in the FMCG space, Guinness was fined 2 billion naira and then reduced to 1 billion naira and all that for supposedly having expired drugs in, or no, expired raw materials in a warehouse, which was totally untrue, right? But it sends, Diageo has been in this country for over 60 years and invested significant amount of money in this country in a three-way industry. And when they did that, eventually it was reduced or reversed, but it sent a lot of tremor and fear amongst people. Now, let us take MTN. MTN did not register 5 million subscribers. It was a security risk. MTN was perceived to be arrogant. MTN was perceived to be predatory and exploitative. Some of these things are exaggerated. However, what happened? There was a fine of $5 billion, which was equal to 7 years of its profitability, 5 times its capitalization, technically putting the company into insolvency. A company that has employed so much, has invested in, over the years, over $2 billion or so over the years in new investment, has affected productivity, because without, you can imagine the PS terminals, the settlement schemes and all that, not just MTN, the industry as a whole.
All right, we'll take a moment and we'll come back, continue the conversation.
Absolutely.
Please don't go away.
Getting more than just the news is to ask straight and incisive questions. And these are excuses from the government.
No, is that right?
And not settle for just any answer. But do you ever get a...
Welcome back. We're talking the economy and all that. But before we went on break, we're looking about the fines that were imposed on some companies here in Nigeria, especially in the telecoms industry. Mr. Iwan, you talked about MTN that was fined about 3 times or 5 times its...
No, 7 times.
Its
7 years profit.
7 years profit, 5 times capitalization. But how does that all tie in if they are meant to, I mean, not just them now, I mean other companies, if they are meant to even thrive in this economy?
No, but the point is that, one, you have to ask yourself, did MTN do something wrong? Yes. Should they be punished? Yes. But should the punishment be a death penalty? Should it be death by firing squad? Right? No. So, the point, what signal does it send? If these guys have invested $12 billion in research and development, $12 billion, they have invested 16 billion naira in the MTN Foundation. They've employed over 2,600 something people directly, and then indirectly loads, and they've actually, the industry as a whole has catalyzed productivity, because without the phones, if I'm traveling from Kano to Lagos to go and look for somebody, because I've phoned him already, I know he's not there, I saved that. So productivity gains have moved significantly, and that is a driver for economic activity. What does this mean? Are there ways